This week on Heroes Made in the USA. Heroes with heart. Like Dale Murphy, the Atlanta Braves star who plays Angel of Mercy as well as he plays baseball. And Chicago teacher and state legislator Jesse White, who uses his spare time to teach kids how to fly out of the ghetto without an airplane. And 10-year-old Chrissy McKinney, who plays a wonderful game of grown-up with deaf children in Mississippi.
Well, the most popular conception of hero is that of a champion on the battlefield or playing field. Today's show celebrates the other kind of hero, the kind distinguished by their good deeds. Now, this kind of hero leads not with his right, but with his heart, like Atlanta Braves star Dale Murphy, the Good Samaritan of baseball.
Usually, you know, I tell them exactly what I do. Put my mitt in the general area and close my eyes and hope it hits in there. If they ask me how to hit, I usually tell them my theory there is swing hard in case you hit it. Some of these questions are kind of interesting. Some of them were kind of embarrassing to answer. Here's one asked why I switched from first base to the outfield, and this is the truth. Dear Vincent, I hurt too many shortstops trying to make a double play by hitting them in the shins with my throws. It was actually by popular demand of our whole infield to get Murphy out of there. That's, unfortunately, is the whole truth.
All of those questions are from readers of an Atlanta newspaper column for kids called, simply enough, Ask Dale Murphy. It's kind of a Dear Abby for the sports page. The man who helps Dale edit the column is Curtis Patton.
He gets a lot of questions about his personal life, what he believes in, and how he approaches life. And he tells about his attitude toward the game and toward life in general.
Curtis and Dale are now good friends, but the story of how their friendship grew reveals a lot about Dale's personality.
Well, I have cerebral palsy, and I became quite ill after surgery one time about 6 years ago. And I developed a blood clot that was life-threatening.
At the time, Curtis and Dale were only professional acquaintances, journalist and athlete. But new to Atlanta, Curtis could think of no one else to call for help.
Dale took me back to the hospital in the emergency room on a Sunday afternoon and stayed several hours with my mother and I while they were checking me out. And he took my mother to the hospital each day for the 10 days that I was in the hospital, which is about a 35-mile trip each way, back and forth, and he barely knew my mother at the time.
I really feel this way about Dale Murphy. I think he's a Hall of Famer on the field, and I think he's a Hall of Famer off the field.
The true image of the man is the fact that he is in the community doing many of things, and this is the sign of a person that's a very giving person.
You might expect Chuck Tanner or Willie Stargel to be a bit biased in their opinion of Dale, but a pure objective look at the statistics tell the same heroic story. Nearly 300 career home runs, most valuable player 2 years in a row, Golden Glove Award 5 times, chosen for the All-Star team almost every year. Dale's performance on the field has been extraordinary, but his actions off the field are equally worth noting.
You know, as an athlete, everybody looks up to athletes in America, and you have a chance to make an influence to you know, impact somebody for good and in their life. And you know, I try to recognize that, and you know, it's tough to do everything that's asked of you, but I recognize that a professional athlete can have an influence and can help.
The time he gives is unbelievable. There's no other player in baseball I don't think does what he does. I don't know how he does. I try to protect him and keep him away. He says, no, I'm okay, but they always want a picture with Dale Murphy. They just want his autograph. Just for me, Dale, just one more, please. I don't know how he can do it day after day.
Being able to meet some of the kids that, for instance, some of the cystic fibrosis kids that I've met that, you know, have a tough time running 90 feet without being, you know, all out of breath. You know, I just admire these people for their courage, and I'm, you know, thankful for the chance to rub shoulders with someone like that. You know, has so much more strength and courage than, you know, than I could ever muster.
It seems that the word no just isn't in Dale's vocabulary. He's worked tirelessly for the March of Dimes, the Heart Association, and cystic fibrosis. But it's tough to get Dale to talk much about his own generosity. He prefers to let his actions set an example for others to follow.
You won't hear any of the bad words coming out of his mouth at all. I mean, it seems like the guy wants to say them, but he doesn't, you know. It's like you can see him, you know, sometimes we go, come on, Dale, go ahead and say it, man. No, and he never does. Amazing.
I remember a basketball game in the 7th or 8th grade that upset me so much that I was still crying when I got home and couldn't sleep well that night. But I don't remember that happening too often. As a young player, Elizabeth, don't ever take the game too seriously because it isn't the most important thing in life. It's good to be able to compete and learn how to win, but you have to learn how to lose too. I would never want anyone to feel that he or she would stop playing because the game was lost. Those things happen, and giving your best effort is the most important thing in athletic competition.
Few athletes have been able to match Dale's performance on the field, and even fewer have been willing to give as much as Dale has off the field. It's no wonder, then, that in the eyes of his fans, his teammates, and even his manager, Dale is truly a hero with heart.
Thank you. Okay. I think every 50 years, God puts someone on earth to represent everybody, the perfect person that they should live by, whether he's in baseball or some other profession. And I really believe the guy that he has down here now is Dale Murphy, because if anybody's perfect, it's a Dale Murphy.
Coming up next on Heroes Made in the USA, Chicago Assemblyman Jesse White challenges street gangs to a tumble, and Mississippi schoolgirl Chrissy McKinney speaks to children of a lesser God.
Our next hero is the leader of one of the toughest gangs in Chicago. This gang is so special, there's a waiting list of 3,000 kids. This gang is as hot as their red uniforms, and traffic stops when they go down the street. Kids literally flip for this gang, and it's all due to founder and leader Jesse White, ex-street fighter, state senator, and heart of the Jesse White tumbling team.
And Cabrini, green, everything is mean enough. Cabrini green. You can try to walk through, but you won't get far, and you might get hit with an egg or a jar.
In the shadow of Chicago's famous skyline is the near North Side and its Cabrini Green housing project, where the 14,000 mostly black residents live with poverty, unemployment, and gang violence. But these kids are escaping, going over the walls to a bright future. And leading them out is a modern-day Pied Piper, Jesse White.
And I don't mind is a devil's workshop. And I think that if a kid is not actively involved in something positive, he has a tendency to rally around things that are negative. There aren't enough male role models for these young people, so they have a tendency to get with the gangbangers, the drug dealers, and stray off the beaten path. And so with this program, it's a no-nonsense approach to work with young people.
Since Jesse White formed his tumbling team 28 years ago, it has averaged hundreds of performances annually throughout the United States. And in addition to 445 such appearances in 1986, the Jesse White tumbling team performed for Nippon Television in Japan and for American television in commercials for McDonald's and Coca-Cola.
It's the one big enough to keep up with your pace. It refreshes your fast for your holidays. Coke is it. Coke.
The Pied Piper had a magic flute, but Jesse White uses love and good common sense to out-recruit the street gangs.
I saw you and Mr. Grant yesterday over by the bus stop, and I was trying to get your attention because I wanted to be down here this morning to work with you.
His approach is to offer kids the same excitement and sense of order and family that gangs supposedly provide.
So many kids can play basketball and baseball, but only a select group of kids can master the art of tumbling. And with the kind of tumbling that we do, it's showy, it's dangerous, it's exciting.
In Cabrini Green, many kids come from households without fathers, where the mothers are overworked and overwhelmed, and often the kids lack the structure of rules and regulations. Gangs have their rules, Jesse has his.
It cannot be involved with drinking, smoking, gang-related activities. have to be a good student, have to be a good human being, cannot spend 1 second of their time making life miserable for someone because of their race, creed, or color. If you're in trouble with me, in trouble with society, then you're in trouble with me. And I think they'd rather be in trouble with the police than have to deal with me if I've caught them doing something that is in violation of our rules and regulations. We should do all we can to set good examples for others, be model citizens, be good ambassadors for this community and for yourselves. I think if you can do those things and continue to do those things, all of us are the beneficiaries of that.
An early graduate of the tumbling team and a recent graduate of Notre Dame Law School, Richard Blackman remembers once being in trouble with Jesse.
When I first met him, I was 6 years old, and I had been sent to his gymnasium because he was the gym teacher at Frederick Vermont Schiller, which is the school located right there. And what I had done was I had taken a box of tacks and putting it in my teacher's chair that day, and so she decided to send me down to him for some discipline. Well, that was the first and only time that he's ever disciplined me. He's never had to discipline me since that day.
Well, Richard is unique. You know, his two brothers were involved with gangs. At one time, they were members of my drum corps and members of the tumbling team. And they got involved with some gang-related activities, so I had to dismiss them. And as it turned out, one was killed. The other one is on the run, so to speak.
The fate of Richard's two brothers is proof that Jesse White offers his kids something that gangs don't, a future. Jesse's involvement and influence extends far beyond the tumbling team. He is a surrogate father to all the kids in Cabrini.
Okay, now you know you got to stay away from the gangbangers. You can't smoke, you can't drink, you can't do terrible things to your neighbors and friends. You understand that?
Jesse White is also a friend to all the Cabrini Green mothers struggling to raise their children alone.
When I ran short and didn't have money for coats and stuff for school, he helped with that. He made sure they had a nice Christmas, and he was just wonderful. And if I have problems and I need to talk to him about the kids, if they were doing anything that wasn't right as far as a man's part, he would talk to them like a father.
I'm gonna bust a rhyme morning, noon, and night, and this rhyme's gonna be dedicated Mr. White. Mr. White, I remember, and 1 minute flat. Look over there and watch the flip on the map. Cause man, I'm trying to tell you just like a dream. I'll be busting out a rhyme. That's the tumbling team. You see, I'm busting the rhyme.
One day, these young people are going to be our future leaders. They'll be our doctors, our lawyers, our pharmacists. And all you have to do is take them like you can a ball of clay and show them that you're sincere, show them that you're concerned about them, and you would be amazed at the end result.
All right, but that there rhyme was from Mr. White.
Coming up next on Heroes Made in the USA, a little Mississippi girl with a woman's heart, and hometown hero Ruby Forsythe.
Children are often innocently self-centered. But our next young hero has an unselfishness and compassion far beyond her years. 10-year-old Chrissy McKinney of Jackson, Mississippi, speaks a language many adults never master, the language of the heart.
You know, I just like signing, and I wanted to do sign language better and meet some deaf people, and I asked my mom if there was any volunteering I could do.
At the age of 10, Chrissy McKinney of Madison, Mississippi is one of the youngest heroes featured in Newsweek magazine's annual Celebration of Heroes.
Since the media has discovered her and her good deeds at MSD as a volunteer, a lot of people have commented that she's, a special child.
Chrissy is starting her second year working with deaf children at the Mississippi School for the Deaf.
They usually don't allow volunteers under 16 years of age. I could come if my mom came with me.
I'm sure every parent sees their child as special, and of course we did too. But she does seem to have some sort of a depth or perspective that you don't normally find in a 10-year-old child.
This seemed like a good opportunity to have a hearing child in the dormitory. But on the volunteer basis, it's kind of hard to decide what can a 9-year-old do. And then there's always the problem of having another child in our dormitory. The only way we could really have someone that young would be for an adult to be with her all the time.
It's too small. get some more shoes, okay?
The girls really fell in love with Chrissy. The staff got to the place that if they thought Chrissy were not going to come, they would almost panic.
While Chrissy's sense of compassion seems beyond her young years, she is in every other way a normal, fun-loving 10-year-old.
I like ballet because I think it's pretty, but it hurts my toes. I'm not very graceful. Sharon is my very bestest friend. Sleep. What's that? What is that? No. Kangaroo. Rabbit.
It's been very encouraging to know that there are still some people who are willing to hang in spite of the the lack of communication and the language loss that our own children have.
What did you do this summer? Swam. And what else did you do?
And it is hard. It's frightening sometimes, especially if you get left alone in a room with the deaf people, then you become the handicapped person.
They're not as obedient because it's easier for them not to pay attention than if you can hear, because you can't really cover up your ears and block out all sound. But if you don't want to pay attention, all you have to do is close your eyes.
Chrissy's interest in signing started with the church. She went with some friends from school to New Covenant Church. The ladies who led the singing there, they did signing along with the words to the music. It was something all the children enjoyed. And she already knew the alphabet, the manual alphabet for sign language, just through school and Sesame Street. It's just one of those things children seem to have an interest in.
It's encouraged other young people to want to come and to try and to say, well, if a 10-year-old can do it, I can do it.
When I went there that Sunday afternoon, right when Chrissy walked in, all the little girls dropped what they were doing and ran to Chrissy. The children there, they're real sweet and understanding. They take to people real quick. I want to be an interpreter for the deaf because I like sign language and working with deaf people, and I want to help them communicate with the whole rest of the world.
In 1938, Ruby Forsythe came to Pawleys Island in South Carolina to teach in a one-room schoolhouse. The children called her Miss Ruby, and they still do, as do their children, grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren.
If I make an assignment, don't come and tell me I didn't have time or I didn't finish. Get out of the class.
Miss Ruby has taught at the school for 50 years now, and while the community supports the school, she draws no salary for her work. She says she's paid by God.
I always tell them to use the word try. And if they try, they don't know what they can do until they try.
Miss Ruby Forsythe is this week's hometown hero.
Heroes come in all shapes and sizes, but they all have lots of heart.